Now, one thing I wanted to go over real quick before we move on to the next section is when you add a name set, to make sure not to use illegal characters. An illegal character is an exclamation point, question mark, any of the special characters on a keyboard. If you put one of those in a name set, it can actually corrupt the configuration you're using of Magnum and cause Magnum not to open or cause you not to be able to use that particular configuration that you say, that configuration or a show file. So what you're safe with is any letter, any number or underscore, upper or lowercase doesn't matter. And if you get outside of that, you can run into issues. So that's just a safety tip right there. So now we're going to talk about the interface tab. When you click on interfaces, it brings up all the panels. Now we have multi-profile, that's in the tab, and that's for our bigger panels like we have in engineering, and that's not something we usually edit every day, so I'm not going to deal with that too much. We're just going to stick with the single profile panels, and these are the 2272, that's the 2RU 72 button panels, or the 1040E, the single rack unit panels. That's mostly what our trucks carry. So when you're going to create a panel, you're going to add a panel for the first time. You click on add, and you can call it a name, and give it an IP address. And select a model, say 2272E. I'm going to add it. So now I've added it, and it shows up down here at the bottom. Now I had the option of doing make like, and make like would make it exactly like another panel. But in this case, I chose to just start from scratch. So this panel won't have anything in it. But normally you can pick another panel if you have another one that's similar, but it's going to keep all of your availability table, and it's going to keep your default destination. So just make sure that you go back and change that. So here's a panel that popped up, and it tells me the interface layout. That's the panel that I'm editing, this one that I just created. And it also tells me that there's nothing available. Everything in this panel is unavailable. So now I can go in here and I can make some stuff available. So if I want to pick a particular device, so say I want my subscriptions, and you see how this order is all over the place by number. So if I click up here on port, it's going to add them all in order, just the way I would like them. I select all. Now I've added all of them, and they highlight as green. Now the other option I have over here in this editing mode table, right now it's going to default to availability. I can look at the grouped availability, and that just puts everything together. So I can just click on a tab. If I want to just add certain things, say I want to add just a couple of things in here, and I can click on them or reorder them, and then close it, kind of go around that way. The other option I have in the editing mode is to reorder. Let's go back to availability. If I go to reorder, it's going to actually allow me to move things around that I've already added. So if I decide, oh, I don't really want that there, I can add that in. So now I'm in the reorder under editing mode. And here, when I click on something now, I have these arrows. And the arrows, so I can move it all the way to the bottom, move it all the way to the top, or if I just want to go down a couple spots and see where it's moving right here. Or I can click on this little notepad paper thing, and I can put in a number. Say I want to put it at spot 75, and now that is where that's going to go. Or I can go back and put it back at the top. So that is the reorder. And I can also select name sets. I have other name sets. I want to make them available to that panel, and I can click on it and select it and make it available. But I can also do that in the front right here. I can go back and forth between them. So now that I have some things available to me, I have to make some kind of a destination available as well. If I click in the blank space in there, that is going to show me everything, not just what's available, but if the blank space is what's available and what's unavailable. And here this tells me the profile that I'm editing again, and it also tells me the interface layout that I'm doing also. So now my destination tab, say I want to look at my virtual, and the same thing, remember your order. That's very, very important. And I tend not to make everything available to every panel. Like I really don't want panels to accidentally switch the switcher, which is what comes up right here. So maybe I want to get that down a little bit more. Maybe I want to make all the Elvises available to it. I select all, and it's going to add them. And you notice here this started at EBS 1.3. Well, that's because the name set, I changed them, and there's different names in there now. But if you're doing a default, you would have EBS 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, all of that stuff in there. So now I want to add stuff in my actual panel layout. And you'll notice that I've got my type up here of what I can do. Well, I can do some keyboard shortcuts on here. I can do S, which will give me my source. I can do D, which gives me my destination. Some of the other things that we can do is L for level, and it's going to start at the first one available. Or I can do M for primary menu. And primary menu is like a page in the Paste world. Each panel has 50 of them. And you can look up here to see all the different menus. I just clicked on the little drop-down box. Now if I like something that's on one page to another, I can copy it and then paste it. So let's say we want this to be a source. So now what I can do is I can drag, I click just outside the box here, and I drag across. I hit S for source. Now I've just added all those sources in order. And I can do the same up here for level. And I can drag just outside the box and hit level again. So I do something like that. And it's starting to look like a panel. Now I can also do a menu, hit an A, M for menu, and that brings up the first menu. And I can change that over here, and that can be my page 2. Now you notice when I went to my page 2, it brought everything over from the previous page. And the reason was everything was set to static. Now to get back out, because I don't have a page 1 in here, I can select it up here, and I can select these buttons and say I want to make them primary. And maybe this button I want to make primary as well. So now I go to my page 2, and because I left these as static, then they stayed the same. So this would be my normal destinations would be here. And this, I can either select it here from menu, or I can type M for menu, and it brings it up. So now I can go back to that page, I'll go to this page. And now in here I can do my other menus. For example, and if I want to change the description on there, I just go to legend, and I can say cam, frame sync, EVS, etc. And then that brings me back to the previous page. And if I say I like this, I can copy this and go to another page, hit paste. The other thing I want to do here is maybe do a last menu. You notice how I hit L, it took me to level first, but because where I wanted to go was last menu, level was the closest thing to get me there. That just goes back to speed of editing. So now I'm in this page. Because I already used that page as page 2, so everything kind of looks the same. So I can actually change that to be a different menu. So I've got page 2, I got my camera page, and that's kind of how you add stuff in there. Now what I can do also in here, I can select my default destination. That's the default that the panel is going to come up to after you send an upload. So you want to make sure that that's something that's what you want it to switch, whether it's an EBS input or a monitor, an ISO, whatever you want it to be. And when you're looking for another source in here, for example, like you type in S, it's going to bring the next one up in order, and the order based on the availability table. And you can just delete that number, and it's going to show you everything that has cam in it that's added. Now say you don't want to do that, you want to search everything, delete everything that's in there, you can hit Control, and now what that does, you just have to hit it once, is that shows you everything that's available to that panel, and you can just scroll through it. So that's just by hitting the Control button. Now if you want to delete these again, you can just highlight them. On a Mac, it's Control Delete. And you can add sources in any direction that you want to. If you want to do source like this, and it's going to add them, and based on the order of availability that you created. You can also select over here the level you want it to switch. Say you don't want to cut it away. If you want a panel that's only going to route video, well, you can just highlight video, and that's all that panel's going to route. Or you can highlight just video and audio 1 through 4, or just audio, however you want to do it. And you can have the subpanels can act like different panels within. So each subpanel that you create could have a different default destination and a different group highlighted here. You can also do your key colors. So like for the sources, say I want when the buttons are just sitting here, normally I want the source to be green. But when someone takes it, whatever source is on air, I want to be red. So that's what's going to happen there. And then once you're done with your changes, you can send them and it'll go live to that panel. Or you click done, you can wait till you do an upload to do it, or you can revert and it'll go back to the way the panel was before. We're just going to say we're done with this editing group. Now if you want to add panels together, or you want to edit them as a group, say we're going to add a couple of them, you go up here to edit, click on that. We're just going to add, let's edit a couple panels. So now I'm editing panels together. And it tells me up here in the layout that I'm doing multiple panels, and I bring my mouse up here and it tells me it's TX1, TX2. I can also go over this little scroll looking thing and it tells me TX1 and TX2. Now I'm going to, whatever I do to one panel, I'm going to do to both panels. And it tells me again I'm doing multiple profiles here. Now this is grayed out, and what that means is that is a different button. Something about that is different on one panel to the next. So it can be a different source, there can be a destination there can be some other button. And there's another grayed out button there. But I can still delete that, and I'm deleting it from both panels now. And I can add another source back in there by typing S. And you'll see what just happened right here. This came up with an SRC at 1. So what that's telling me is there's a problem in the availability of these two panels. That something about these two panels is different in the source, either the destination or the source. There's something that's not the same. So if I wanted to fix that, what I would have to do is go back to those two panels, and I can search for them up here. And I'm going to say I want to do make like, and I'm going to make these two panels like TX3. It has to be the same type of panel, which in this case it is. So now I can go back to TX1 and 2 panels, and I can do an edit. And now these two panels will be exact copies of that one. You notice there's no more blank spaces, and there's no more weird characters or any of that kind of thing. But one thing you have to be careful of is the default destination is now the same on all of these panels. And in this case, it's set to null, which is okay. So I would have to go back and edit the panels individually in order to set a different destination for each one. But in this case, for this purpose, this will work just fine. Again, I can use either one of my name set names. I'm going back, and I would change both the panels together when I did that. So the other thing we have here, we went over already, the name set. You can make that the default name set. And this tells you the model, and you can search by just the model if you want to. Go back. And the name is what's displayed when you're editing the panel, but tags can be some other identifier. You just type in there. It can be a person's name or where they're sitting or some other identifying information about the panel. And what I like to do when I'm naming them is I'll name everything that needs to go together in a group. So for example, like here, if I knew this was the front bench of tape, I would still find some other identifier to call them, like I would say, maybe say EBS on each of them. And then maybe this is rear tape bench, maybe I would put EBS on that one too, so that I would know that these panels all need to be edited together. Or you could do that in tags. That's another way you could use tags. So if I did EBS here, and EBS down here, now I look at my tags and say I just want to see EBS. Well, now I know I need to edit all of these together as a group. And from here I can change the name sets. I know that these panels always stay together, but some way you need to separate these so that you know these panels always get edited together. And even if you only want to change one thing on one panel, if you do that, you take them out of the group, but now you have to go back and edit each panel one at a time. So it's much quicker either if you use the tags or change the name or do something like that so that you can edit these panels as a group all the time and never separate them. And that will be much, much faster. Now the other thing you can do over here is disable a panel, and this can be used like in this case, this is 94 setup again. They have a couple templates, so they don't want these to be noticed by Magnum. So by hitting disable, Magnum won't look at them and they won't connect to them. So it takes less time on uploads and it's not looking for a real panel. The other way you could use this is if you have on the front bench production, you don't want to use all the router heads. You don't want somebody to accidentally hit a button. You can disable that panel and then it'll just go dark and you won't use it. The locate feature is really just for the older style of panels. It's not so much for ours, but what it causes them to do is to flash. So if you were to click on a couple panels and hit locate on, if you had one of the older style panels, and this is the 1000E or the 2048E or some of the real basic panels, it would actually cause them to flash so you could see them. Now if you wanted to send changes to a bunch of them, you could do that here too. You could send changes and that would go. It would actually upload to, and it'll let you know when it's done. You can also, in the newer versions of Magnum now, you can export a panel config. So say you did a really big panel for a show, like a source and destination panel, set of buddy panels or something, and you wanted to bring that in on another show because you like what you did, well, you can export that, and it's going to create a zipped file. And then you can bring that back in, and what it's going to look for inside that zip, the name is going to be the name that you created for the panel, and the IP address. And when you load them back into another panel, those have to be the same. So either you have to edit your file that you exported or edit the panel to match. So those two things have to be the same. Now, if you don't want to keep the availability table of the panel that you are importing, you have to delete the file in there. You have to delete the profile.csv file. And then the availability table on the panel you're uploading to won't change. It'll just keep the menu structure that you did in the layout, but it won't bring in the availability table. Now, Symfony is something we don't use very much, but that's with third-party interfaces and profiles, bringing them in, so that's really not something that we do. Quartz deals with image video. So if you go here and you go to image video and you edit it, this is going to look at what image video can see, what's available to image video for naming purposes. And it looks at the order number that's on here. So if you created a new subscription, for example, and you want image video to be able to see it, you would have to add it. You'd have to go to something and it would show up as unavailable or go into the blank space, and you would have to make it available by clicking on it. And then in the image video, you would have to go to the bottom of your list of your sources that's in there and put in this number and the name that you called it. Now you can also change name sets in here and have it look at the other name set. That's the show name set. And you could do some naming in there if you wanted to have image video, just look at that. And then once you've made changes, you can either say you're done and send the changes, or revert to go back and not do those changes. And that is about it for interfaces.